Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for today's session, How to Deliver Applications 6 or More Times Faster with Jenkins and Continuous Delivery as a Service. Just so everyone knows, there is a question window where you are welcome to put questions as we go. We will have time to answer them at the end. We are also recording today's session, so you will all receive an email later on with the link to the recording and the slides. And we think it's going to be a really great session. So I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dan Jungst.
Thanks, Max, and thanks everybody for attending. Today we want to talk about how to deliver applications 6 or more times faster with Jenkins, and something we're really excited about to announce today is continuous delivery as a service. My name is Dan Jungst. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing, and along with me today I also have CloudBees, who's a Senior Product Manager. We are both with CloudBees, the enterprise Jenkins company. So the first question is, why do we need to deliver applications faster, right? Well, I think we're probably all in this industry. We probably all know that it's really an application economy today, right? Everything is driven by software. And as Gartner says here in this quote, one of the top problems that IT has is facing the nonstop demand from the business to deploy more software, deploy more features, drive more innovation for the business, right? All of these thought leaders in the industry, whether they're analysts or the big systems integrators and consulting firms and management consulting firms, are talking about really the need to move faster in terms of delivering software. Forbes calls it out in articles. Deloitte is talking about real-time DevOps. It's really becoming a predominant and pervasive theme in the industry. And it's really because everything that we're doing today is moving faster, right? And everything's being powered by software, whether it's your mobile apps or your or web applications, social media. Everything is really being driven by software, and people want to do things faster and faster today. So for us, one of the things that we've seen over the years is that continuous delivery and automation are really becoming the key to delivering software faster. Continuous delivery is really all about applying automation to the application lifecycle so that you can accelerate the application lifecycle and move faster in terms of delivering software. Let's dive into that a little bit more and talk about continuous delivery in the context of the application lifecycle. So what we know is that there's a continuum when you go to produce applications, produce software. It starts with the developers, right? They have the ideas, they write the code, and they check it in the upstream, which is on the left. And then a lot of steps have to go through in order to get that application code, get that innovation, get that new idea out to production, right? You have to compile and build the application. You have to run tests on it. You have to do a number of different types of tests, whether integration tests or functional tests or user acceptance tests. And then you may need to move that application code from one environment to another, from your development environment to your pre-production environment to your staging environment, and then on to production, which is really what we consider the downstream. So that's really what the life cycle looks like. Over the years, people have taken steps to optimize the life cycle and to really accelerate and improve things in terms of the methodologies that are used in this. And in the development world, one of the things that started a number of years ago is the approach of agile software development. So this really takes an incremental approach to building software. You divide up your software into smaller bite-sized pieces in terms of doing the coding and delivering the feature to the testing department. So the agile software approach, is really designed to make small incremental changes so that you can adapt your design more quickly over time, instead of the large waterfall approach where you just design everything up front and then you go spend 6 months building it. So agile, has gained a lot of traction. There's a lot of shops that are doing agile now. The next thing that took hold was sort of building on the agile movement, was moving to leveraging automation for continuous integration. So once these small amounts of code were checked into the source code repository, automation platforms could then take that, build the application, and then run tests on it in an automated fashion, right? So that's really continuous integration. It means integrating that new piece of code that was checked in by the developer into the main branch of the source code and running tests on it. So doing that automated or continuous integration, if you will. Continuous delivery really extends that in a very powerful way to use automation to take that code that's now been built and tested, to deploy it to staging environments, to run more tests on it, to leverage automated testing, automated source code scanning, and make sure that code is completely buttoned up and ready to go, and make it available to the stakeholders in whatever environment they want at any time, right? So continuous delivery is about using automation to make sure that at any point in time you have code that's ready to go, ready to be deployed. There's a difference here between continuous delivery and continuous deployment, which is often confuses some folks, and that is that continuous deployment is automatically pushing that code into production. And that's really what the unicorns are doing, the Intuits and the Netflix and the Etsy's. Not every organization is ready for that today, right? But we feel that continuous delivery provides a ton of benefits in terms of making that code ready for delivery. And then if you really are ready, then you can go ahead and move on to continuous deployment to extend that. If you take a look at this whole methodology, this whole process, the other thing that comes into play is DevOps. DevOps is really a cultural transformation that you go to in your organization by applying these methodologies and applying automation, so that you can have a cultural transformation. You can have an organization where your dev teams and your operations teams are working together very seamlessly, using the tooling, using automation to accelerate application delivery. So why do you want to do that? Well, why do you want to do continuous delivery? Well, it's really about accelerating application delivery, right? We've done a number of studies of our customers and gone through the case studies and really seen some pretty dramatic increases in their ability to deliver. Orbitz was able to deliver 5 times faster, Newstar up to 4 times faster, and Veridity up to 20 times faster. When we looked across all of the case studies, we saw that on average they were using continuous delivery. Our customers are able to deliver applications software 6 times faster, and that really impacts the business, right? When you can get new innovation out, new features, new applications out for customers to use, you're really going to help drive the business and make it successful. So many organizations, really want continuous delivery, and what they would actually love is continuous delivery available as a service. But they're not quite ready for the public cloud. They don't want to do their builds and their testing up in the public cloud, for a variety of reasons. They have security regulations, compliance reasons, data privacy, or competitive concerns, right? And so because they're not ready to move to the public cloud for doing continuous delivery, that's really led to the rise of an open source project called Jenkins, which is really the #1 automation platform for continuous delivery. It's an open source project. It's enterprise software that you can download and install and run in your own environment. So it's become hugely popular. Over 120,000 active installations of Jenkins worldwide, regularly ranked in surveys as the top continuous integration and continuous delivery tool that's out there. Jenkins has a plugin architecture, so it has plugins for the complete suite of DevOps tools that you may want to use. All the testing tools, all the source code control tools, all the deployment tools, all the configuration management tools are integrated with Jenkins, and that's another thing that's led to its immense popularity. But Jenkins, as an open source project, has some gaps that need to be filled when you think about running Jenkins in an enterprise in a mission-critical way. Gaps around scalability, gaps around security of Jenkins and the usage of it, gaps around the manageability of Jenkins, and then just fundamentally, no technical support, no throat to choke, when you need to call somebody for problems, which is the nature of any open source project, right? So that's where CloudBees comes into play. CloudBees takes that community-powered innovation that's in the open source Jenkins, and we really button it up and make it suitable for the enterprise with our CloudBees Jenkins platform software technology. CloudBees Jenkins platform includes the open source core, but then it adds to it advanced scalability features for high performance, advanced pipelines, continuous delivery pipeline capabilities, which are very powerful and unique. And also integration with next generation infrastructures, whether it's cloud or Docker containers, however you want to use it. We also bring advanced manageability with the dashboards and cluster management for Jenkins as part of the CloudBees Jenkins platform. And then advanced security with role-based access control and single sign-on connecting to enterprise LDAP systems and identity and access management systems. And then a very important piece is the enterprise technical support that CloudBees brings to the Jenkins platform. So we have different levels of support. We have a technical success manager offering that can give you a dedicated support resource. But this is very important when you're running open source software in your enterprises to have some way to get technical support for it. The CloudBees Jenkins Platform Enterprise Edition is one of two editions that we make it available in. The Enterprise Edition includes things like a special Jenkins Enterprise Master that has these advanced features for high availability and security and large installation support. It also includes the Jenkins agents or build nodes to run your jobs in. And it also includes something called the Jenkins Operations Center, which is a special manager of managers for Jenkins, if you will. It's has a dashboards for allowing you to connect to all your Jenkins masters, see them in one view, understand how they're running and what's happening within them from a build standpoint. It also allows you to share resources like agents and also allows you to control the updates, the plugins via something called an update center. So very powerful capability that really augments the open source Jenkins. A number of features that are in the Enterprise Edition. I'm not to go into each of these in detail, but really features focused around management and performance, master resilience, sharing resources, improving developer productivity, security, continuous delivery, and we actually also have a special feature called the support module, which connects back to our support organization and provides the data we need when you have problems. The Operations Center, as I mentioned, is really this very powerful management and monitoring capability for Jenkins. Allows you to connect up multiple masters and understand how they're running and performing. Allows you to control the plugins that your teams are using. Allows you to see dashboards with different analytics, whether it's around your CloudBees Jenkins performance or the builds themselves. A number of advanced features that come with the CloudBees Jenkins Operations Center as part of the CloudBees Jenkins platform. Visibility and analytics is something that's very important when you're running large Jenkins installations. You really want to know what's happening with all the builds and the continuous delivery pipelines that are executing through it. So one of the advanced, really cool features of the platform is that we give you advanced visualizations of your pipeline status, your continuous delivery pipelines, your build jobs, all the stuff that's happening within your Jenkins environment. So it gets to the next question is really, what's the easiest way to provide Jenkins-powered continuous delivery as a service? We've talked about the value of continuous delivery. We talked about how in large organizations, they really want to provide that value to all their project teams, right? They want to provide continuous delivery very easily to every new project team that spins up. They would just want to make it super simple for them to start using Jenkins and start actually executing continuous delivery pipelines so they can drive that innovation. So we're excited to announce the CloudBees Jenkins Platform Private SaaS Edition, which is an elastic and scalable, really Jenkins as a service solution for growing enterprise organizations. So it provides a turnkey Jenkins as a service. It includes all the benefits that I talked about with the Enterprise Edition, but it runs on your enterprise's private cloud. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. It's really cool because it provides elasticity and scalability and resilience for your Jenkins instances and allows you to manage them all with a single console. It really does allow you to enable continuous delivery as a service for your project teams. CloudBees Jenkins Platform Private SaaS Edition is a very cool piece of technology. It runs on your private cloud, as I mentioned. So whether you have OpenStack or you want to run it on Amazon Web Services with a VPC connection for a private cloud, you need to allocate those resources, and then you have storage attached as well. And then you simply install the Private SaaS Edition on top of it, and then that makes the Jenkins as a service available to your project teams. It uses internally some very cool technology, including the Docker containers, as well as the Mesos orchestration engine for containers. So what this does is for the shared services manager, the shared engineering services team, it gives them a way to easily provision this whole CloudBees Jenkins Platform Private SaaS Edition on top of their private cloud. For the Jenkins admin, for the project teams, it gives them self-service access to a Jenkins environment. They just click a button and they can get a new Jenkins environment spun up. And then for the developers, they really get to take advantage of CD as a service to be able to very easily build CD pipelines and run them whenever they're checking in code to really help them focus on what they want to do, which is writing code, and not on all the back-end process of implementing continuous delivery. So it's easy to deploy to your private cloud. It allows you to stand up new project teams within minutes. It shares resources across project teams because we're using this container technology and the cloud technology. And it also gives you automatic failover and recovery, and Cal's going to show you more details on all these features. And it provides analytics and visualization across your infrastructure. So using the leading CD platform, being Jenkins, this allows you to really enable continuous delivery for all your projects, which allows you to accelerate innovation for the business. So the business is going to be happier, your end user customers are going to be happier, and the IT organization is going to be happier because they're really accelerating the way they work. We showed this to one of our customers in our beta program, and they're a large technology manufacturing company, a very large company, and they said, this is exactly what we were about to build ourselves. Thanks for beating us to it. They were going to go architect some kind of big Jenkins as a service solution, and then they saw what we did, and they were super excited. So we are excited about it. We think it's going to really help in terms of enabling people to move to continuous delivery much faster. And sorry about that. And then move to continuous delivery faster, and then help drive innovation in the business. So I'm going to turn it over to Cal at this point, who's going to walk us through a demo and talk about some of the more features in more in-depth and show us some really cool stuff. So Cal, I am making you the presenter as we speak.
Right. Thank you, Dan. Can everybody hear me and see my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Dan. So I'm Cal Vissa. I'm a product manager for the Private SaaS Edition product, and I'm going to walk you through the demo of this product that we recently launched a couple of weeks ago. But before I do that, I want to set the stage and really, walk you guys through what you can expect to see with the demo, and also talk about the experience of the primary personas that we're targeting with the product. So the story starts with Simon. Simon is the shared engineering services manager in an organization. Maybe some organizations call this team the central DevOps team, right? So there's many organizations now setting up these these teams. And their primary job, so Simon's job and his team's job, is to essentially provide continuous delivery as a service to the organization, right? So how would Simon, go about this today, right? So today, the most common approach that we see is Simon and his team would take the open source Jenkins product and would come up with a lot of custom solutions strapped on top of it to extend the open source Jenkins product into a continuous delivery solution, right? And the job becomes much harder if the organization wants to host all of the continuous delivery tools and the developer productivity tools on the cloud, right? It's not an easy job to take the open source Jenkins and scale it natively to the cloud. So Simon and his team can spend many months or many millions of dollars worth of time can be sunk into accomplishing this task, right? So that's precisely why we as CloudBees have delivered the Private SaaS Edition product to help the Simons of the world, to help organizations to achieve continuous delivery rapidly, and we provided this CD as a service solution that Simon can very quickly spin up on the organization's private cloud. So let's kind of walk through the other portions of the demo now. So this slide, I kind of put this slide together to talk about how the different personas, and Dan kind of talked about this just a little bit ago, but I want to extend it a little further. So this slide talks about how the different personas would interact with the CloudBees Private SaaS Edition product. So it would start with the Shared Engineering Services Manager, which is Simon, would set up the cluster. And as you can see, the cluster has a bunch of components. You've got a resource management tier, you've got a this control plane here, which is actually the installer, and we'll see that in a second. And you've got a whole bunch of Jenkins resources that are running inside of the cluster. So you have the Jenkins Operations Center, you have multiple masters, you have multiple agents. For those that don't know, agents and slaves mean the same thing. And then you've also got with Private SaaS Edition, we're also shipping Elasticsearch as a component to store all your log information. And each of these Jenkins resources and Elasticsearch components, they're all running inside of Docker, right? They're all Dockerized containers running on the cluster. So once Simon has set up this cluster, the next thing that Simon would do is to go talk to the different departments. And again, we've seen this in organizations today where maybe inside of an organization, you could have departments, and those departments may have their own DevOps teams, right? And these guys, may also serve as the as the Jenkins admin for that department, right? So that's what we're calling here as the project team Jenkins admin. So once the cluster is set up, Simon would go talk to this project team Jenkins admin. Let's call that person Penny, for example. So he'd go talk to Penny, and he'd tell Penny, hey, you know what, the cluster is set up for you. So feel free to start setting up your masters, and and let the developers know that the cluster is now ready to for the developers to start setting up jobs and creating pipelines and executing the pipelines. Okay, so this is a typical workflow that one would see inside of an organization. Okay, so now that the slides are done, I want to get into some of the cool stuff here and show you the actual demo. So I want to start the demo by talking about 6 amazing things about the Private SaaS Edition. Okay, so the very first thing is turnkey installation. I want to show you how easy it is to set up the CD as a service cluster using the Private SaaS Edition on your private cloud. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to actually set it up on AWS. So for those who might not have got the PR news about the launch of Private SaaS Edition, we support both OpenStack as well as AWS. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to show the entire thing on AWS. Okay, so I'm going to get out of presentation here, and I'm going to show you my terminal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wear the hat of Simon. Okay, and again, Simon is this shared engineering services guy. He's the guy who's responsible for setting up this CD as a service solution and provide it within an organization, right? So what would the first thing that Simon would do is to essentially download the package. Okay, so they download the Private SaaS Edition package, and then Simon would untart it and then create a template. Okay, I'll show you that in a second. So then Simon would create a template, a project template like what you see there. I did this just before the demo. So let's go on to that. And once the template has been created, you can see that the template contains a bunch of entities here. I want to call your attention to 2 key files here. So these are files. These are configuration files. The cluster init.secrets file is where Simon would go in and enter the access information, the access credentials for AWS or OpenStack. And it's simple, right? I mean, given that we're, I don't want to show my secrets here, but that's what Simon would do. And then Simon would come in and get into this config file here. So let's open that up. And here you can see this is the primary file that Simon is going to interact with in order to set up the cluster. This file has a whole bunch of parameters, okay? But the key things I want to call your attention to here is the size of the cluster. So Simon can get in to this file and decide on the size of the cluster. How many computes do I want to spin up on AWS or OpenStack? What is the type of those computes? Whether it's an M3 extra large or an M3 large or a small. All of that information, Simon would enter that over here. You would save that, and once that is done, then finished. Then Simon is now ready to start setting up, the Private SaaS Edition cluster on AWS. So it's as simple as running a command here. So Simon would run bees PSC init. Okay. So soon as we run this, it's going to take a few minutes to essentially set up a cluster. I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to go quick here. So if you have any questions, I'm going to take that at the end. So Simon will run this command, and as soon as the command is run, within a few minutes, an environment, a brand new environment, such as this, would be set up, for you, right? So I want to pause here and essentially just summarize what I just showed you. Simon and his team have now been able to set up a simple Jenkins cluster running on AWS in a matter of minutes. Okay, and what you see here is again, this is brand new. I set this up just a little while ago, and once the cluster comes up, what's happening behind the scenes is that the application, the Private SaaS Edition application, is actually taking the CloudBees Jenkins platform and it's essentially scaled that to the cloud. So you can see a lot of CloudBees Jenkins platform capabilities here, right? And Private SaaS Edition extends that to a very high extent. And we'll talk about specific features of the CloudBees Jenkins platform in a second. So once the cluster is set up, the first thing that Simon will do is to log into the Jenkins Operations Center. And for those who don't know about the Jenkins Operations Center, this is the brains of the CloudBees Jenkins platform, if you will. From this central location, you can, this would connect to all the masters that get spun up on the cluster, and you could get, a whole bunch of information from your cluster. You can get a lot of analytics information, and you get a lot of other activities that Simon can do right from this Jenkins Operations Center here. Okay, so another cool thing that I want to talk about as part of the installation is the Private SaaS Edition automatically takes backups of your Jenkins home directory for your master. So in the event a master were to crash, you already have a backup now, and the application can actually spin up another master once a master crashes. So it spins up another one automatically, and it uses the backed up configuration. So you as a user of the cluster don't need to worry about losing information. Okay, I want to talk about the other cool features of the Private SaaS Edition. So I'm going to go back here. The second thing I want to talk about is how easy it is to set up masters. So again, continuing the story, right? So now Simon has set up a cluster within an organization, a Jenkins cluster within an organization, right? So what would Simon do next? Simon would essentially go talk to that department level DevOps engineer. We call her Penny, right? So Penny, he'll go talk to Penny saying, hey Penny, cluster has been set up for you. So please go ahead and create, set up masters for your department, right? So and Penny knows what to do here, right? So Penny would essentially the good practice here is to set up folders. Okay, so given that the Private SaaS Edition leverages the CloudBees Jenkins platform, as I said, and the CloudBees Jenkins platform has a bunch of features. One of them being the folders plugin here, and the other another key one that I want to call out is the role-based access control plugin. So using a combination of these two, and I'll talk about that in a second, Penny can create folders and then create masters and then attach those masters to those folders, and then using the role-based access control plugin, she can decide, she can get a lot of fine-grained, control over who can access the master, who can create jobs, and all of that, good stuff is now in Penny's hands, right? So let's start with creating a folder here, and you can see that I did this just a little bit ago. So let's create a folder. We'll save that, and then and the folder would look something like this, right? So once the folder is created, then let's actually start. Penny can go and create a master now. So it's as simple as clicking on that new master button, and let's give that a name now. Let's give that PSE webinar master. Hit go, and boom, now you're getting into the configuration screen of the master. So for the purposes of the demo, I'll leave everything as default here. Hit save, and the master is starting to get provision. Okay, so it'll take a couple of minutes for the master to get provision. But what is happening here now is underneath the covers, the Private SaaS Edition, we're leveraging the power of Mesos and Marathon to essentially look at to do resource management on the underlying infrastructure, right? So we're looking at, okay, hey, of the computes that got spun up on this cluster, which ones have resources now to spin up this master? And this master is now running inside of our Docker container, so which is really, really great, right? The other thing here, so once the master has been created, then Penny can essentially move the master to the folder and can again use the role-based access control feature to have fine-grained security implementations, right? So CloudBees Jenkins platform and Private SaaS Edition, as a result, allows for multi-tenancy of masters. So you can have, and using the folders, capability here, you have clean isolation of masters from department to department. Okay. So this is the second cool thing that I wanted to talk about. So you can see how easy it is now to set up masters on the Private SaaS Edition. Okay, so now let me move to the third cool thing that I want to talk about, which is you can now have, so you've got, let's say there is a use case where, okay, now Simon has set up this Private SaaS Edition cluster. Simon has talked to Penny to create a new master, but maybe this organization that Simon belongs to is already a CloudBees customer, and they've already got some masters and slaves running, and they want to connect that to this cluster that Simon has just spun up. Why would they want to do that? Because of, again, the Jenkins Operations Center. Jenkins Operations Center is your single pane of glass. You can connect your existing CloudBees Jenkins masters, that cluster, to this Private SaaS Edition cluster that just got spun up, and you automatically suck in all the information, all the data from those external masters into the JOC, right? And you can get to see all of that analytics here, right? So Simon can now get the entire view, not just of the masters running on the cloud, but also those external ones that are running, somewhere, in some data center and whatnot. So that's why it's important. So the third feature that I want to talk about is that how do we connect an existing cluster to the Private SaaS Edition, cluster that's been set up. So you would start with essentially, so let's say that there are a few masters that are existing today. So you would, and you would do this for each master, and you can see how simple it is to accomplish for each master. So I would go into new item here. I would give this a name. So let's see, PSE client master, and then we would say, okay here. And we're getting into the configuration. Again, we're going to, I'm going to leave the defaults in there. I'm going to hit save. And so now what this is asking me to do is give me the URL of that master to connect that master to this Jenkins Operations Center. So I happen to have another master running, another location in AWS. So I'm going to type in the URL to that one. This is the master that I have running outside of the Private SaaS Edition cluster. I'm going to hit push configuration, and this is, and then I need to enter the Okay, I am having a demo moment here. For some reason, this is not working, but essentially it is as simple as that, right? So, you would get in to, you just essentially, enter the URL here, hit push configuration, and boom, the Jenkins Operations Center and the client master would, essentially be connected, and you're good to go. Okay. Let me move on to the fourth feature here that I want to talk about, which is around monitoring and analytics. Okay, so before I do that, I want to take a quick, I want to get onto a tangent here and talk about scalability as well. So we, the Private SaaS Edition team here, we wanted to really push the boundaries in terms of how far we can scale the product. And we've put together this environment here that we internally call Guppy, and this is also running on AWS today. Guppy today, we've been able to set up this cluster with over 200 masters, and they're all running jobs. They've all got a bunch of slaves connected to it. So this is a pretty humongous cluster here, and we think this is larger than what any of our customers, any of our CloudBees customers have going today, right? And some cool facts about this cluster is, in addition to the 200 masters, 200 plus, I think there's about 210 masters now running in this cluster. We are also, it's running anywhere between 400 to 600 jobs at any given point in time, and the size of this cluster is about 1.5 terabytes or so. Okay, so that's humongous, right? And then we're constantly we're using this environment to really test the scalability aspects of the Private SaaS Edition, and we want to extend this further and further. And I'm hoping we can have a webinar very soon where we can really show some impressive numbers in terms of how big of a cluster we've been able to set up using the Private SaaS Edition. So I wanted to talk about monitoring and analytics, right? So that's the fourth key thing that I want to talk about. So Simon, once he has set up the cluster, and once masters have been set up, or even existing masters have been connected to the Private SaaS Edition, Simon would want to know, hey, how is my cluster performing, right? What's the health of my cluster looking like? How are my masters doing? How are my builds doing? All of that information. So with the Private SaaS Edition, with the launch of the the product, we've got a whole bunch of analytics already baked into the product. And again, many of these analytics pieces that you see here are already there in the CloudBees Jenkins platform, and we have extended that to a significant level with the Private SaaS Edition as well. So with Private SaaS Edition, you can, for the health metrics, you can actually hover over each of these masters here, and you can see a whole bunch of health metrics that are showing up here. So this in no particular order, looks like this master is healthy because this space is okay, looks like the backups were successful, and everything else looks good. In the event something were to go wrong with any of these masters, you can, there's this alerts page here, so you can go to the alerts page and you can see what the alerts are. Okay. Analytics is something that I talked about, so let's get into that. I want to talk about a specific use case that maybe Simon would be interested in, right? So I'm going into the Build Analytics tab here. So let's look at build queue times, right? So this is something important. So Simon will want to know, hey, I've set up this cluster, but is it adequately, set up, right? I mean, is the capacity good enough for my customers? If my customers who are developers are setting up jobs and they're running jobs, are the jobs just waiting in the queue? And that's pretty important. So Simon can come in here, click on build queue times, and maybe change the time filter here. So let's look at something that happened in the last 24 hours, right? And what you see here is essentially the ELK stack, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. So we've integrated Kibana into our analytics piece here. So Simon can see, what are the 10 most queued jobs, for example. Can click on that and essentially can do a drill down into what those jobs are. He can then start to maybe even go into the logs tab and start to look at the logs coming out of masters. And in fact, the logs we're actually collecting logs not just from the master, but even the computes where the masters and slaves are running. So we're getting a whole bunch of information coming out of the logs, and you can see, we've got logs, for workers and controllers here, and Simon can essentially go and search for specific patterns. So there's all those cool things that Simon can do. One key aspect of this monitoring and analytics is Private SaaS Edition. I just talked about this just a little while ago. We have the capability of doing auto failover. So in the event a master were to fail, the Private SaaS Edition can almost instantaneously spin up another master in its place. And if that were to happen, then Simon can will actually get an alert. So an email would be sent to Simon, and Simon can also go to the alerts page here and see what happened and can take appropriate action. Okay. So another cool thing that Simon can do is if let's say that the cluster resources are running low, Simon can again go back to the CLI, the terminal screen that I just showed you, and can run a simple command to add more capacity. One single command, like add worker. You can add, you can run that command, and you can keep increasing the size of your cluster if your capacity is not enough to support the workload coming in, right? So I talked about 4 key features so far. Ease of installation. I talked about how easy it is to set up a master. I talked about how easy it is to connect an existing client master to the Private SaaS Edition. Unfortunately, we had this demo moment. I couldn't show you the complete connection there, but that was the third one. And the fourth one was the monitoring and analytics. So now let me move on to the 5th cool feature that I want to talk about, which is dynamic provisioning of Jenkins agents. And again, for those who don't know, Jenkins agents means the same thing as Jenkins slaves. Okay, so getting into the environment here again. So the use case for this would be, so let's say that you've got a developer now. So the cluster has been set up, everything is fine, masters have been set up. Another developer is actually using the cluster, right? So, but the developer wants to run some browser compatibility tests, okay? And the developer says, okay, hey, you know what? I want to test my application against, say different versions of the browsers, IE and Chrome and Firefox. And for this, I want to run all the tests in parallel, but I need resources. I need to spin up slaves on demand. I don't want to go talk to the ops guy and get machines and start setting them up as slaves, and it's such a pain, right? So with Private SaaS Edition, the developer can set up a job that looks like that and essentially run it. Right? And once the job runs, and you can see here, what's happened behind the scenes is Private SaaS Edition has, again, leveraging the power of Mesos and Marathon here, we have started to spin up, Jenkins agents for you, right? So each one, so there's about, 10, Jenkins agents that are getting spun up. So there's a bit of a sleep time that I've configured in this job. So in about, 60 seconds. So after every 60 seconds or so, a new agent can get provisioned, and each of this is each agent here that you see is running the test, right? And they're all running in parallel. So this is pretty amazing, right? So the developer is not really waiting for an ops person to provision hardware for him anymore, right? One click and boom, you've got the resources available at your fingertips. Okay. So now let me talk about the very last feature that I think is good to call out, which is really, the Private SaaS Edition provides really powerful cluster operations capabilities. Okay, and what I mean by that is, again, the use case here is, so Simon has set up the cluster, everybody is using it, awesome. He can see the utilization patterns through the analytics. But now, let's say Jenkins, there's a security patch for Jenkins, and you need to roll that out. Simon has to roll it out to to the entire cluster, and let's say in a cluster this big. Excuse me. If Simon has to roll out that patch across all these masters, that's a big effort today, in a non-Private SaaS Edition world. But with Private SaaS Edition, and again, by using the power of folders here, so I'm Simon. I've set up a folder here called, say, the mobile team. Okay. Excuse me. So the mobile team folder here has some masters, right? So essentially what I'm trying to say here is, assume that the cluster that you're seeing, all the masters are organized into folders, and each folder belongs to a department, right? So I can now go into a specific folder, and I can start, one click of a job, I can upgrade all these masters one at a time. So I'm minimizing the impact to the entire organization by now rolling out security updates, folder by folder. So let's do that. Let me show you that in action. So I would go to the home page of the JOC, go into Manage Jenkins here, Configure System, and click on. So here's the thing that I probably glossed over. So as I said earlier, the masters that are running on the cluster are running inside of as Docker containers. So these are the masters are essentially, we've created Docker images for each of those masters. So in order to roll out a security update, you're essentially going to put out a new Docker image, right, containing that security update. So Simon would come into this global configuration screen here and, change the version of the Docker image, for example, okay, and hit save. And once that is done, now Simon is ready to apply the changes to specific departments. So again, let's go find the mobile team here. And you can see that because Simon went and changed the global master Docker image version, these guys under the mobile team, they are now out of date, right? So these versions are no longer up to date. So again, Simon can now come in here, set up a job that looks like that, and essentially run it. And as soon as once the job is running here, let's see okay, there you go. Okay, cool. Okay, it took a second for it to. So you can see that the masters are now up to date, and the masters are restarting. That's why you see the the cloud icon. So it'll take a couple of minutes for the masters to restart, but it is as simple as that. You essentially click a single button to update the masters, say for the mobile team, and you can do this now across the different folders. So with that, I want to conclude my presentation. I want to talk about 3 key takeaways from the demo that I just walked you through. First one is really simple installation and management capabilities. So the product provides very easy to use, install and management capabilities, and setting up a CD as a cluster in a matter of minutes. Okay. The second thing, the second key takeaway is, the product allows for on-demand provisioning of Jenkins masters and agents now, like I showed you a few minutes ago. And the third key takeaway for me, what the product provides is really powerful analytics, and which provides really deep insights into the cluster and its usage patterns. And I think these 3 key concepts, I think is exactly what a Simon or an organization would look for in order to set up a CD as a service solution. So with that, I'm done, Dan. So all yours now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Can you go back to full screen mode there, Cal? presentation mode.
Say that again, Dan. You want me to share my screen again, or?
Yeah, just share your screen and go into presentation mode.
Got it. Okay.
And the next slide. Yeah, so just a couple more things, and then we'll get to some questions. If you're interested in more information about either the CloudBees Jenkins Platform Enterprise Edition or this new exciting Private SaaS Edition, feel free to hit our website at cloudbees.com. We've got a ton of information up there. So, and also ways that you can interact with us and reach out, and you can even run a trial of the Enterprise Edition if you want. So that's will be a great resource for you. Next slide. And we also want to tease you with something else that's coming up, which is Jenkins certifications. So CloudBees is sponsoring a certification program for Jenkins, both the open source as well as the CloudBees Jenkins platform program. And so keep your eyes open for that. We'll be announcing that, and we'll be running certification exams and providing real industry certifications, just like you see for other projects and other technologies. All right, next slide. And with that, we'll wrap it up. The message is you can really deliver better software faster with the technologies from CloudBees, either the Enterprise Edition of the platform or the Private SaaS Edition. So I'm going to turn it back over to Cal to moderate some questions. We have about 8 minutes till the top of the hour, and it looks like we had a good number of questions come in. So Cal, back over to you.
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, can someone read the questions out for me? Let's see.
Sure. So a lot of people are asking about if it's possible to migrate their existing masters over to the Private SaaS Edition.
Yes, and that's exactly, that's one of the things that I showed, a little while ago. That was, number 3 here, essentially, that I showed. So it is very simple to essentially connect your existing masters to the Private SaaS Edition. Again, that was the demo that actually, I bombed a little bit, where, the actual connectivity between the client master and JOC, couldn't be established completely. But it is very simple. You can go into the cluster that you've set up. You can take the URL of the master that you have, add it to your JSC, and essentially just connect the two together, and you're good to go.
Great, thank you. There's also a lot of questions about the support of additional cloud providers such as VMware, Cloud Foundry.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, we've got that question from a couple of prospects and customers before. And again, these are as the Private SaaS Edition. We believe in making this the CD as a service solution that organizations can run on their private clouds. So when as part of the launch, we've got support for AWS and OpenStack, but we are looking at additional IaaS platforms as well, and that's part of the it's in the roadmap here. So for those who are interested, feel free to reach out to us, and we can talk more about what's coming and how we can help you.
Let's see. Another one that we get asked a lot is they have Jenkins running on premises. So do we offer a migration path, from on premises to private?
I think there's 2 parts to that question. One is yes, and the answer is yes, by the way. I think the first part of the question is you want to connect your maybe this is it. If I'm answering it incorrectly, let me know. But you can connect your I think this is a similar question as the one earlier. Is you can connect your existing Jenkins masters to the Private SaaS Edition. But you can also, what we also have is we have a capability to migrate your data. So your data from that's running on your say bare metals or whatever, you can actually migrate that to the masters that are now running on the Private SaaS Edition. We have that capability as well. I hope I've answered that question correct. Let me know, whoever asked that question, let me know if you have a follow-up.
Cal, here's a good question. Is there a way to template a master with some pre-configured items?
Is there any way to template a master with pre-configured items? I don't know the answer to that one. Vincent, do you know?
Yes. So as you probably noticed, we provide Docker images to provision masters. So these images are public. They are published on Docker Hub. And you could perfectly extend these Docker images to provide your own and add new things, including default items that you could put in the Jenkins home if you want.
Thank you. Any more questions? Good questions, by the way. Great questions. Thank you.
Here's another good one. Are we using built-in analytics of JOC or external? And the second part is, what is the performance impact if you are running built-in JOC analytics?
We are running, again, I'm hoping I understood the question correctly here. But yes, so once the Private SaaS Edition cluster has been set up, as part of that installation, we do also set up an Elasticsearch cluster, and and that's our analytics cluster, if you will. So that's the built-in analytics part here. So there is no external analytics cluster that the Private SaaS Edition product leverages today. I'm not sure about what the questioner is asking in terms of performance. We haven't seen terrible performance issues. We have seen other issues though, that we nailed before we launched the product. So we had the problem of how do we keep a handle on the huge amounts of data that is getting pumped into Elasticsearch. So we've been able to make some modifications to addressing that problem. But otherwise, we haven't seen a performance issue with the application itself.
Hey, Cal, there's a couple of questions around plugins. How do we provision plugins? And how do you update them? Maybe we'll talk about what Operations Center provides for
that. Yes, and I think Vincent, probably you have a better handle on this than I do.
I'm sorry, I don't think I got the point of this question. Maybe can you rephrase it and we try to answer.
And?
Yeah, the question was how do we manage plugins, in the Private SaaS Edition environment, and how do you update plugins when you need to? We're essentially using Jenkins Operations Center internally, so it would help with that, as I understand it.
Okay, so the way we manage plugins through Private SaaS Edition is essentially the same as a regular CloudBees Jenkins Operations Center. So you can define an update center in the Jenkins Operations Center, where you can put approved plugins, and then you can have the masters using that update center as an upstream, and only update plugins from there. Hope I answered the question correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Cal, here's another one for you. Does CloudBees manage the relationship with AWS if you want to run on AWS? In other words, would we just treat this as Jenkins as a service from CloudBees?
Yeah, we do. We're running this as a service. So basically, the Simons of the world, the Simons of the organizations, they're the ones who have decided to use, say, AWS as their private cloud instance. They have that, let's say they've set up the account with AWS and whatnot. And Simon would essentially provide the access credentials to AWS, to the Private SaaS Edition, and the installer will then essentially reach out to those APIs and start spinning up the computes on the AWS, instances, right? So
right.
we as a team do not manage any business relationship with AWS as part of this this setup? That's what the question was about.
Right. That's, yeah, to clarify, we don't manage a relationship with AWS. You need to get your own AWS instances, and then you deploy the Private SaaS Edition on top of that.
Right.
All right, so it is just after the top of the hour, so we will have to be ending the session for today. I do want to thank all of our speakers and presenters and everyone here to help with questions. I am going to be taking all the questions and compiling them so that we can answer them offline for anyone who asked something that we weren't able to get to. And we will be sharing the slides and the video with you soon, so I wanted to say thank you once more for joining us and for asking so many great questions, and thank you to our presenters today for giving a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.